beautiful gems. We started things off down in the conference with a hypercar with the amazing Rimac Nevera. Now we find ourselves here at FAF with just a fantastic collection of cars. Chris here, the general manager for Pagani and McLaren in Canada. Chris, thanks for having us at your beautiful booth. There's so much to drool over here. If you don't mind, and I'm joined by the lovely Richard Hammond here. We're going to let Richard talk in just a second. I know you need a break from that, right?
No, thank you for lovely. I enjoyed that.
Truly lovely. Chris, if you wouldn't mind telling us what we're seeing here. I know Huayara Roadster.
Close. Oh, sorry, this is pretty loud. Thank you for the introduction. Of course, you know, every year we like to present some of the finest cars that we have available in the Canadian market, and the Huayara, the Wind of God. I believe Richard's had a lot of time behind the seat of a coupe specifically, if I'm not mistaken, but it's Horacio Pagani's masterpiece. I mean, this is the second generation Pagani. The first was the Zonda that everybody knows famously, and most recently been succeeded by, not by performance, but succeeded by the Utopia, which unfortunately we don't have here this year. You guys can absolutely expect to see one next year. But everything made out of carbon titanium on the top of these vehicles. Everything is hand built, limited to about 35 cars that they produce annually. Carbon body. I mean, every single car that we have here is a full carbon bodied vehicle. It's an option that you can get through Pagani. Typically, you could also get it painted. But I mean, I can go into detail for days and days on these things. Every nut and bolt is made out of titanium. There's what, 100,000 euro worth of nut and bolts alone on the.
Chris, tell me about the ailerons or the flaps back here. Speed brakes, downforce, active aero. What goes on at the back of the car?
All of the above, I guess. I mean, yes, it's active aero. So depending upon how you're utilizing the car, the wings on the front of the car as well as on the rear of this specifically will adjust depending upon the performance or what you're trying to achieve. If you're cornering, the left side might go up as you're going through a right-hander to really help keep the car settled. Under brake, and of course they become very active, much like other brands similar to with similar systems right behind us here as well.
One of the things I've always loved about approaching a Pagani up close is everything is state-of-the-art, very futuristic, but then there's lovely little sort of old-school analog touches like a leather strap here holding the bonnet down.
Remember that Horacio Pagani is an artisan. I mean, he lives off of, you know, a lot of the vision that he saw from Leonardo da Vinci to, you know, what attracts him in his eyes. You take the little attention to detail, as you mentioned, like the leather straps you get from vintage race cars, to a lot of the dials on the inside of the car, which is very similar to an airplane. And then the mirrors, which were inspired by his wife Christina, and her eyes as he was looking at her one evening and wanting to be insanely romantic. Maybe it was on Valentine's Day yesterday, I don't know, but that was one of the inspirations that he came forward.
Richard, that's a power move. What do Mindy's eyes look like?
Bloodshot. They wouldn't make it.
Tell us, if you would, a little bit about your, what do you remember about your first experience with the Pagani?
I adore these things. I adore the brand. I love the nerve of Horacio. I love he decided to set up shop right in the heart of Italian supercar world. The confidence that required in his product, and that was reflected in what he made. I've always admired as well the selection of parts, so engines, let's go after the best machinery, but above all, the craft. It is crafted, it is made, and I think that right now is important. At a time when we are seeing this division, aren't we, the sort of polarization out of the purely utilitarian aspects of transport with the necessary and inevitable decarbonisation of the transport infrastructure, as that's going on, as it must. At the same time, that still leaves space for passion, automotive passion for these machines that move us, and it's seldom expressed better than it is by cars like that we see here, because it's got a sense of humour and fun and joy. I think all of Horacio's cars, I know they're crafted, I know he designs the mirrors to match his wife's eyes, and it's romantic and beautiful and wonderful, but it's also, to a huge extent, the product of a 10-year-old's imagination, and that 10-year-old lives inside all of us, and I think it's beautifully expressed with these cars. So yeah, I've always had great fun driving them, and I've never crashed one.
One of the few. Yet. There's always a chance. There's always a chance.
We won't throw that out there.
Chris, how do you, do you know how the carbon fiber weave reflects or emerges out of the paint? Is it a very thin spray with clear over it to generate this beautiful finish?
Exactly, that's 100% what it is. I mean, everything is done by artisans, as Richard just alluded to. I mean, everything being handcrafted. The team that's focused on the carbon fiber and the aesthetic portion of the vehicle, from the women to the men that spend countless hours to perfect this weave, and then the body shop that actually does the actual paint work and the finish on it is unparalleled.
Tell us about power and weight.
So this car is 1,500, it's just under 3,000 pounds. I'm trying to remember what it is in kilos precisely. It is actually the lightest roadster ever produced, lighter than the coupe, which is very rare. Whereas typically a manufacturer, if you take the one behind us, it's just a little bit heavier by 15, 20 kilos. So it is a removable hard top. The hard top does not stay with the car. It stays at home or with your butler or the vehicle following you as you drive the vehicle. That's ultimately. Power plant, V12 twin turbo, built and produced by AMG. It's the only manufacturer, Pagani being the only manufacturer that AMG will actually allow Pagani branding to be on their engine specifically.
And what's the output of that?
This engine is 625 horsepower.
Okay, awesome. In a car that light, yeah, for sure. Absolutely stunning. I live in Malibu, so not uncommon to see Paganis on Sunday morning ripping up the road, and what a glorious sound they make. But the presentation of this is fantastic.
Yeah, it's spectacular. It's just a joyous sense of fun. We need more.
Tell us, what else do we have over here? This one looks even more wicked. This doesn't exactly look street legal, or is it?
You're right, it is not. This is probably more in your wheelhouse. This is the Zonda R. It was the first race car produced by Pagani. This car dates back to 2012. It was the one and only Pagani Zonda R to come to the country. Since it's arrived in Canada, it's actually gone through a facelift, so we've done a little bit more of the Revo, the Revoluzione spec to it, so you're going to see a lot more cannons on the front end of the vehicle, a much more aggressive rear end of the car as well, suspension updates. This is a one-off, very bespoke variant of the Zonda R called the Liquid for a customer that we have here in Toronto.
But a track toy.
It is solely track toy, yeah. So I've been fortunate to actually drive this car in Mount Fuji in Japan,
really?
as well as here at Mosport. Yeah,
I just had my first experience there a few weeks ago, actually, in Japan. And suggested retail price.
I think market value, you'd be looking at north of $6 million for this vehicle, yeah.
Gracious, all right, terrific. Well, we'll get to the McLaren stuff in just a bit, and I just want to take any questions from our esteemed journalists here in the crowd while we have a couple of minutes. Anybody have a question for Richard or for Chris regarding Pagani? Awesome, we've answered all your questions as well. We got one. Yes, sir.
Hey Richard, do you have a favorite Pagani in particular?
I'd have to go with the Roadster, because just the glamour, the fun, the comedy, the entertainment, the pantomime of it. I think if you're in a position to be able to own and drive such a thing, you're doing the world a favour by parading it about. I think it should be subsidised by the state, really, to do it. It's a public service driving that thing around for the benefit of everyone. I don't really think that.
It's a privilege, absolutely.
Well, Chris, thank you very much for sharing these with us, and thank you for bringing these to the auto show. I got to tell you, like any young kid, these are the kinds of cars that were on my posters. You know, back in the day, it would have been a Countach or a Testarossa. Today, it's a Pagani, and this show is special because of these kinds of vehicles, and I don't think I've ever seen in the 4 or 5 years I've been coming here this amount of eye candy. The team's done a great job, so thanks for having us. We're going to reposition over into the center of the display. One more question. Yes, sir.
How much of this car is art?
110% of it.
110% art and emotion?
And emotion. It's all emozione, as Horatio would say. Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for your questions. We're going to reposition here and welcome the FAF Motorsports team. If you guys join us here in the center. Thank you. Thank you, Richard.
One more question here. Gentlemen, one question. Can you get one question? Hello, can you get the question from the... young generation woman journalist, my daughter. Yolette, she has a question.
I wanted to know, like, what your anybody's favorite part of the car. Yeah.
All right, we're making a few last second adjustments here. We've got a high chair. I didn't say anything.
You thought it, I could see it.
I did not. I just said we have a high chair.
Yeah, a higher chair, that's for me.
Well, since you've
It's so
clearly-
high, I don't think I'll be able to get on it.
since you've claimed the throne.
It is quite the throne, isn't it? Steady.
All right, folks, we want to welcome to our center court here. First, somebody you probably all know very well. He is the driver of the number 9 Pfaff McLaren in GTD Pro. He is the youngest ever inductee into the Canadian Motorsports Hall of Fame, a 6-time IndyCar winner, vice champion of Dancing with the Stars. Mr. James Hinchcliffe, big round of applause. Come on up. Why are you shaking your head, vice champion?
Yeah, you always manage to squeeze that one into my intros. I appreciate
All right, let's get a few more people up here. We've got your team manager here, Mr. Bertolotti. Steve, welcome. And Chris Pfaff, owner of Pfaff Motorsports, McLaren, everything going on. Welcome. Good to see you again. Richard, please, your throne.
Thank you.
Yeah. You guys want to give him a hand getting up there?
Thank you. No, he meant a hand up. That's no clap.
You bet.
Oh, hang on, it turns. I'm going to, right.
Get out of your way here. Carefully position myself. James, we'll start with you. When I walked into the display here, and Chris, thank you for sharing these amazing cars. I know it's not easy to get all of these together, and this is the kind of stuff that this is why we come to the car show, see cars like this. James, when you see the 720S GT3, did I get that right? In the flesh versus the road car, I'm reminded at just how much goes into GT3 racing. This thing's a beast. You had your chance to drive it, race it at Daytona just a few weeks ago. What's it like climbing in something like this for the first time? You've come from IndyCar, pretty cool stuff, right? This is different.
It's very different. Yes, and there was a lot to learn stepping into it. You're right. I mean, it looks incredible. The road cars are beautiful. The race cars always have that little bit of an edge, I think, from an aesthetic standpoint. It looks mean. It looks purpose-built to go racing, and that's, I think, what's so good about this car. When you look at how they designed the GT3, it's the only car in the class that is actually a carbon fiber monocoque tub. It's not a 2-frame chassis. It's really built like a little prototype. So this is a race car that they made a couple of production models so that way we could go racing with. And stepping into it is awesome. I mean, coming from an IndyCar background, very, very different type of car to drive. You know the difference. You've done both. First of all, you're sitting on the left side of the car. You're not in the middle. You have a roof. That's kind of new. Doors. That's kind of new. But then learning to use the technology in the car. You know, an open class like this with all these manufacturers, there's so much more development than there is in IndyCar. So you have things like traction control. You have things like ABS brakes. Things I don't think personally belong in a race car, but they're here. That's part of the deal, and you have to learn as a driver how to maximize those tools to find a lap time, and it's very different. So it was a huge challenge to get into, but it's been a lot of fun.
And Steve, an entirely new car for your race team. You won the GTD Pro Class 2 seasons ago with Porsche, did an amazing job, and then surprised everyone with this pivot to the McLaren GT3 as a team with your engineers, your mechanics, all of the personnel. This has to be a massive adjustment from what you were used to.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been an adjustment. Porsche was an amazing partner. We had so much success with them on track. With that, the engineering and all the progress we made making that car go fast was something we had to really just delete and start over. As James mentioned, with the carbon monocoque and it's being V8 twin turbo, a lot of the architecture of this McLaren 720S GT3 Evo is that makes the setup window a lot bigger. So I've been joking with our engineering staff that the setup window used to be a lot smaller on a Porsche. We have 5 engineers on the team that are working to find every last tenth of a second. And I think we unloaded the car at Daytona, and every driver cycled through. We're like, yeah, it's pretty good, it's pretty good, it's pretty good. And I'm like, all right, well you're going to go do this, and you just end up repurposing the work because the car is just so incredible. So yeah, we've had to learn a lot of new things, but a lot of the development and the future opportunity that comes with the McLaren brand is what really excites us. Because with Porsche, we were customer racing. We're an amazing customer of theirs that had a lot of success, but we were just that, customer racing. With McLaren, we have the opportunity to be a partner of theirs and work towards a future that helps sell road cars, because the correlation between the two is substantial. Unfortunately, not similar in Porsche land, whereas here there are a ton of parts that are transitioning road car to race car, and then help us sell cars, and then also kind of grow with them as a brand. We're a young team still, as much as we've had success. We want to be part of their growth trajectory as much as our own.
Yeah, Richard, what do you see? I mean, as a Brit, of course, what do you see with this brand that has only expanded and grown in tremendous fashion over the last several years? Of course, it started with the F1, and then everything went quiet for some time. And then there was the collaboration with Mercedes, and then it went quiet for a little bit. And now it's a full-fledged sports car brand. Back home, how are the Brits viewing McLaren these days?
I think that's the point they are viewing, that they're seeing on the road. The F1 was a unicorn, so seldom seen. It was more spoken about. You were lucky if you ever did see one. Now they are familiar with seeing them on the road, and that's everything. That correlation between race car and real world car is so important to building a brand, and I think that's what's given the brand substance.
Yeah.
I mean, more substance than the cars. It's heavier than the cars. That lightness we were talking about, that pursuit of that is so thrilling and so visceral. And I think it's great to see them on the roads. That's kind of the point.
Someone made the mistake of loaning me a 720 when it first came out.
Yeah, I wouldn't have done that.
It was, Chris, it was absurd, the performance that you can experience while still being street legal, at least from a technical standpoint. I love the fact that guys like you come into sports car racing. A lot of times successful businessmen come into sports car racing and say, hey, I'm going to put together a team, I'm going to fund this team, I'm going to hire the best drivers, but I'm also driving too. Not you. Very unselfish in this regard. You've come in, no different than a Ganassi or a Penske, come in to win and put the best drivers you can find in the car. What's it like as a team owner in the sport, but not getting a chance to drive? Or do you desire the chance to get behind the wheel?
Well, I tried out for the team, and Steve fired me pretty quickly. They looked at my resume and said, no, I'm a better commercial guy, so that's what I've stuck to. So I think we all know our places on the team. Being in the auto retail business, racing's a natural thing. It's built our brand, and for me, it really is the partners that we have on the team, and just try to expand the brand awareness.
What led you to making the switch here to McLaren? Obviously, you're a dealer of many brands, but what inspired you to make this jump?
Well, it was nice, and McLaren was kind of chasing us, and because of the success the teams had, it was great. I mean, Porsche has been a great partner for us over the years. But we had this opportunity with McLaren that I think is going to open some new opportunities for us, and that was really the reason we wanted to do it.
James, what do we expect this season? You're going to be in for the endurance races, I believe. I know we count on you at NBC to hit all the IndyCar races, hopefully this season. But tell us about your schedule and expectations.
Yeah, so for me, 3 races on the calendar for this year. Rolex 24, which we've already run, Sebring 12 Hour coming up in March, and then I got to sit for a while and wait till October to drive again at Petit Le Mans. But no, it's the expectations are high. This team, even though they're going through such a big change with that manufacturer switch, the level of performance that they've showed over the years, that's created an expectation with within this group. They're here to win. They don't race just to show up. They don't race to sell cars necessarily. They race. That's a nice knock-on effect, hopefully. But they race to win. And no one on this team is using the manufacturer switch as an excuse to not show up to the racetrack every week with the intention of winning races. So we didn't have the reliability we needed over the 24, but we had pace, which was encouraging. We're expecting to show up to Sebring and contend for the win. We're expecting to show up to every track and compete for the win.
Richard, you've worked with so many brands, you've experienced just about every brand on the planet from an automotive standpoint. In IMSA racing, professional sports car racing in the US or in the WC in Europe, you have more manufacturers, more teams than they have space for now. It's unprecedented. At Le Mans, the list of teams and manufacturers wanting to be in that race is at an all-time high. We're at the peak of sports car racing throughout time in terms of that demand. Why is that? Why, in an era where we're talking about, you know, occasionally autonomy and EV and things like that, everybody wants to go racing, and it feels like the more we ramp up on one side, the more people still want to go experience it.
Yeah, I think it's an inevitable thing. It comes out of our collective consciousness or unconsciousness. And if we think back to the dawn of the car, what was the first? Well, the first thing we did was invent it. The second thing we did was race it. Day two. Oh, this is good. You've got one. Mine's faster than yours. They've always caught at us because, as I've said several times during this event, these things were the machine we designed and made as human beings to give us access to everything that we need beyond shelter. Everything after a roof over our heads we have to go and get. So we made a machine that enabled us to go and get it. And if I have a machine that lets me get to the resource, the mate, the party, whatever I need faster than you or you, I'm winning. So racing was inevitable. And I think we're seeing a reinvention of the car. We're never going to see the end of the car. And during this process of reinvention, we're getting a reminder. I think it's just bubbling up spontaneously, a reminder of how crucial, how critical this machine is and what it means to us. So I'm not surprised that as it polarizes out between the purely utilitarian and the intentful, the on purpose, the considered, we're going to see more racing, we're going to see more collector cars, we're going to see a renewed enthusiasm for classic cars. All the really good bits, all the cool stuff around our shared passion are going to bubble to the surface, and I think more people are going to cluster around them. It's all good.
So to summarize, there was Adam, there was Eve, there was Steve, and then shortly thereafter a McLaren 720.
Yeah, pretty much. I'd say that was the order of it. Yeah, write that down quickly so we can remember.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us today. Any questions from our audience while we have everybody up here? Yes, young man.
What you have done for Canada has been a very positive. Do you have any ideas on how we can get
I'll just repeat the question for the audience, which is for Mr. Pfaff. Chris, the question is, how do we get more youth involved in motorsports?
Well, there's a number of ways we try to do that. You know, we had the open house in December where we just opened it up to all our fans. I think we had 1,000 people show up, which was amazing. We're also involved in the Motorsport Karting Center, and we're trying to develop ways to make that more attainable by anyone who wants to start racing, and then create a ladder for them to develop themselves. So those are a couple of ideas that we're working on, and yeah, Steve, you want to add more to that?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. You know, arrive and drive karting is everyone's first step. I mean, there's inevitable dollars that it takes, but you know, starting that platform, the more people we can get into the sport is where it starts. So finding a way to let people have fun and enjoy the sport we all love is where it's going to start. So we're a firm believer that, you know, the karting community is how we're going to do that.
I'll also add, if I may, that not everybody wants to be a driver in motorsports. Sure, it's a great part of the job, but there's opportunities as technicians, as engineers, as marketing and communications professionals. There's even a Rod Campbell Award, if you look that up, that identifies young people that want to work in marketing and communications and racing, and awards paid internships to the winners every year. So application does close soon, so lots of opportunity. You do have to go find it, though, and at the same time, the teams and the organizations in motorsports are always looking for more ways to get young people involved. So thanks for the question. Any others? Yes, over here. Thanks, Steve.
Sorry. I guess this applies to anyone, but in regards to preserving motorsport, and I especially and emphasizing on Canadian motorsport, like last week it was like, you know, over 10 degrees in February, and that can be an issue for like snowmobile racing and stuff that's important in Canadian motorsport heritage. Like, you know, Gilles Villeneuve, he started with snowmobile racing. So how do you guys think are some of the best ways to preserve motorsport heritage and also most ensuring it for the future?
Well, I'm an American, but I'm married to a Canadian. I have 2 half-Canadian children, so I'm not an expert.
I'm basically your work wife, so.
It's true. But I will say that last night, for the 5th time, we had the Canadian Motorsports Hall of Fame induction black tie gala. And what a wonderful way to celebrate Canadian motorsports history through that organization. James was inducted, like I said earlier, as the youngest ever inductee. In the international category, we had Dario Franchitti inducted. Richard was there for the event. James, I think you're probably best positioned to talk about how to continue to embrace and celebrate the rich history, which is Canadian racing.
Yeah, well, I think you actually nailed it. Honestly, I was going to say that. First of all, we can't control the weather, unfortunately, so that one's a bit of a challenge. We'll get back to you on that one. But no, I think celebrating the past, celebrating the rich history this country does have with motorsports is so important. I've been connected to the Canadian Motorsports Hall of Fame for a long time. My dad used to sit on the board of it, so it's something that's been a big part of my life and my career, and I've always wanted to stay close to the Canadian racing community, try to give back in any way that I could. The go-karting side of things, making it more attainable and accessible for people is a huge part of it as well. But then, yeah, just really celebrating that rich history. We're not a huge country population-wise. I know we're a big landmass, but we're not a lot of people in the grand scheme of things. But we produce a lot of great racing drivers and riders and all sorts of different, motorsports experts. And so I think just the more we can spread the word about motorsports, keep growing it, the heritage and kind of preserving that place that I think Canada has in the world motorsports stage will kind of come naturally.
I would just add, I have a dream, and it's a dream right now, to have a Motorsports Hall of Fame facility. So where we can preserve these cars, where people can go like the Hockey Hall of Fame.
Cool. Let's make that happen. Richard, your first visit to the Canadian International Auto Show, if we take a step back from motorsports and just the greater automotive marketplace here and the passion, what have you experienced over the last 48 hours? What will you take away from this event?
There's no doubt the passion for the entire industry and everything around it is still very much alive here in Canada. It's been great to see it. Also, I was saying just before we came out here, it's fascinating to see how many people I've spoken to who know people I know within this. It might be a vast global multi-trillion-dollar industry, but actually it's a human industry and it's made up of people. And it's been fascinating to meet so many folk who know people I work with on the other side of the pond and around the world. That gives you kind of a good feeling, and it reminds you that this industry is about people. It's about machinery, but it's machinery that moves people.
Yeah, and certainly the people that are here to enjoy this conversation. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate your passion. What a great auto show. This is already starting off. There's one more question I think we have time for, James. Okay.
This is for everyone probably. The question is, so a lot of the auto shows and a lot of the events in general, they're going digital. So my question is, how important is it to keep on-site automotive shows like this?
Yeah, great question. The question is, how important is it to have on-site physical in-person auto shows? And I'm glad you asked that, because this show in particular, I think, is a shining example of one of the best auto shows in the world now. If you look at, there was 28, I think, brands exhibiting last year, now 44 this year. Record attendance, or near record attendance last year. Now there's almost double the brands on display. In addition to all of these amazing vehicles, the exotics, the Cobble Beach display, Jason Campbell and his team do a fantastic job to bring the very best in the world. There's nothing that I could imagine that's in the world today that's available that isn't here for you to see, that everybody's curious about. If you're a manufacturer, if you're an attendee, it's the perfect marriage. You have every single option. You can walk up, you can see, you can touch, you can sit in, you can effectively try it out. You can even drive EVs downstairs across the tracks right now. So I think it's hugely important, because this experience is not digital, Richard. Driving is a physical, emotional activity, and you have to see and touch to know what you want and what you dream of.
Yeah, I don't think it's remotely surprising that in an increasingly digitized world, there's a huge appetite for the very analog and visceral experience of meeting up together for real. I mean, I run Drive Tribe, which is a digital agency. It's a digital world. and we've started hosting live events, not on this huge scale, but nevertheless, we found the same. The first time we all stood together and could look one another in the eye, for real, look at the cars in the metal, under sunlight, for real, it brought the thing to life. So I think it's more and more important.